Thank you, Devin. So let's officially kick off our January monthly meeting. Thank you all for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're logging in. We have an exciting program for you all today. Please introduce yourselves in the chat. I will be here most of the time. I might jump off for a few minutes and come back in, but my colleagues, Rosa, Ivy, Carla, Devin will be engaging with you during the program. I am so happy to let you know that our Jillian has organized it's an exciting panel. I can't wait to hear this. So welcome again. My name is Huri Gödelekian. I am the chair of NGO-CSW, and I'm so excited to welcome you all. Oh, I love seeing all your faces. Thank you for being here. We are still doing our best, organizing our first ever hybrid forum. And we've had a couple of glitches. I'm sure if you applied for parallel event, or if you're trying to get yourself familiarized with what's going on with our forum, there's very few glitches, and I'm so proud of my young team who has been responding and confirming. I hope you all heard about your parallel events if you did apply. If not, please confirm. Please email parallel events at ngocsw.org or info@ngocsw.org to check in and make sure that you confirm. We're also kicking off a new election process. We now have a nominating committee, which I am proud to announce. For those of you who are members, as you all know, NGO-CSW New York is a New York-based committee. So all of this committee business happens in the New York area. You can be a member, you can donate and support NGO-CSW from anywhere in the world, but our committee has to be based in the New York area. So if you're not here, I'm sorry, but I do need to make an announcement to all our New York committee members that we have a nominating committee, and it's co-chaired by Cecily Kern and Victoria Edmonds, and helped out with Winifred Doherty, Mary Luke. Oh my gosh, I just drew a blank. And anyway, there's 5 nominating committee members who have agreed to serve, and they're off to a great start. We will present them with our slate, and then we will see what the next steps are. Most of you will hear. Yes, the 5th committee member is Saida, who was also an executive committee member. Okay, so I'm not going to take up too much time. There's such a great program and updates from our dynamic forum co-chairs, and of course, our advocacy and research group. So thank you all for being here. I will engage with you in the chat while we listen to everybody else's update. And I hand over the mic to Rosa and Pamela.
Thank you, Hudi, and good morning, everyone. And again, welcome. We're really excited. The NGO-CSW 67 Forum is less than 2 months away. So it's getting to crunch time. So we have a couple of announcements. Parallel events have been reviewed and acceptance letters have gone out. If you have not received your acceptance letter, please send an email immediately to info@ngocsw.org. Again, that email address is info@ngocsw.org. 99% of the parallel events have been accepted, and we're really pleased. We have such a wonderful array, about 350 events in person and about 500 a little less than 500 virtual. So it's going to be an exciting time. Please be sure to register for the NGO CSW Forum. Please go to ngocsw.org and follow the links to register. At the forum, you can look forward to the regional caucuses, where you'll be able to meet other people from your region and develop a strategy for going forward. The conversation circles are going to be phenomenal. Please make sure that you look to the look out for the conversation circles, and in the chat, Devin has put a link directly to the Hoover registration form. So you no longer have to go to ngocsw.org. You can go directly to Hoover. We're going to have the virtual exhibit hall. If you have not purchased your ad or your booth at the virtual exhibit hall, please do so as soon as possible. We want to make sure that we have room for everyone. So we're looking forward to seeing you there. And again, if you have any questions, please send an email to one of us individually or to info@ngocsw.org. And I'll turn it over to my co-chair, Rosa.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches. I'm Rosa Lizardi. I am the other co-chair for the NGO-CSW Forum. And I'm also the global director of the Feminist Task Force. Thrilled to be here. So great to see so many of you here. As Pamela said, we are in full mode for the NGO Forum. And I have some announcements that I want to relate to you. And first of all, as Pamela said, the registration is open on WOVA for our forum, March 5th through the 17th. So please register as early as you can. It is free. It is for everyone. You do not have to have accreditation by ECOSOC. So we're really thrilled to be able to provide this service, this forum, this gathering for everyone. Begin to explore the platform. It is a new platform. We heard feedback. So we're going with this platform, which some have used in the past in other conferences, online conferences. And so you can begin to set up your ID, your avatar on the WOVA platform. So please explore that, register now. Registration is open. I also want to tell you about the conversation circles that we're having. And these are organized by the NGO-CSW to provide sort of a deep dive into some of the intersecting issues with our main theme of innovation and technological change and digitalization for empowering women and girls. So there are 10 conversation circles. I'm sure my colleagues will put links to information about them, but they range from looking at issues of sexual reproductive health and rights, violence against women, economic justice, looking at anti-racism, anti-colonialism, indigenous women and migrant women, looking at LGBTQI issues and how they intersect, also youth issues and youth leadership. And there will also be a conversation circle on specifically with focusing on girls, with the working group on girls. So please begin to look at that. They will be on the Wednesday, March 8th and Wednesday, March 15th. they will be continuously throughout that day. So one conversation circle will follow the other. And there will be virtual and some hybrid. So please look out for that. We're actually still organizing the time, tinkering with the time for each one, and looking at the fabulous facilitators who will be able to coordinate the dialogues and discussions within these conversation circles. We will also have 2 orientation sessions on March 6th in the morning from 8 to 9:30. March 6th would be a very kind of basic NGO CSW 101 about the CSW, about the forum for those who have never been on the forum, have not come to the forum, and for those who want a refresher course. The second day on Tuesday, March 7th in the morning, will look more at advocacy issues. So we have a great team of our volunteers from the executive committee, all of them volunteering as co-chairs on these different committees, and the orientation and advocacy committee has provided also some fabulous videos, training videos, and our interns have helped. So big shout out to the team who's helped on this. I also want to let you know about the Vienna Cafe. The virtual Vienna Cafe is something that we implemented 2 years ago when we were forced to go online because of the pandemic. And we wanted to continue to engage with member states. So we organized these small gatherings of civil society with one member state, sometimes 2 from the same country, but a number of different groups. And we're going to do it again this year. We begin the week before the CSW on the Wednesday, and then we continue the week of the CSW. And then we are hoping to do the second week of the CSW. We're trying to keep some flexibility because perhaps we can do something in person. More information on that will be provided. The Vienna Cafe is really through one of the larger women and feminist groups that are organizing around the CSW, so that we're able to have colleagues from the same group nominate people. And it's going to be virtual, so we can have participation from our global partners around the world, which is something that's very important, especially during the time of negotiations. And that's it for me. I think now I want to pass back to well, Hootie, or I think I'm gonna call on Ivy.
Ivy.
Okay, yes. So let me just pass over to my colleague Ivy Hook, who's been doing a great job with Ani on the advocacy and research group. So thank you so much.
Hello, Happy New Year, everyone. I think this is our first one, right? It's January, already half over. But so since September, the Advocacy Research Group has been engaging you in advocacy. That's 4 months already. And so I think you've heard enough of that. Maybe not. There are 5 key recommendations that we put out for the Zero Draft. That was in December. And then there was a sign on. And actually, as of this morning, there are 451 of you that have signed on to the recommendations. And then there were a series of videos in Spanish, English, French, and Italian. They're available by social media and also on our website. And also a letter template on sending the recommendations to your local or regional or member states and the recommendations, it'll probably be put in the chat, but it's on our website. There's also an ARG, which is the Advocacy Research Group webpage as well. And so how we wanted to engage you today was actually a little quiz on CSW. So how much do you know about CSW? So it's not specifically about the recommendations, but we thought it might be a little fun. And so that poll will come up for you to participate in. I think you see it now. I see it. Okay, I just finished submitting mine. Someone's saying that it doesn't work. I don't know how to do that technical end of it, but
we are getting responses. So it
okay.
might be just like a glitch for that one person.
Great. Thank you, Devin.
Yeah.
So I think we could show the results. I think it was enough time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Can everyone see the results?
Yes, I can see them.
Great.
Wow, wonderful. I think so 82% of you got the answer for the theme. It is on technology, digital innovation. So the member states on the Bureau, this might have been a little tricky, but yes, the answer, it's not Sierra Leone, it's not Canada. So everyone else. So those are the two that they're not. And member states, there's CSW Commission should be 45, unless I'm wrong.
No, it is 45.
Okay, I had to double check myself. I was like, I think it's 45.
I know, I added that 193 as kind of a sneaky trick answer.
Yes, so
Definitely trick question now.
So it almost got me. I was like, what? No, the commission itself, that's just CSW. So those change every few years. That doesn't stay the same. 193 members, that's all together in the United Nations. So that was a little tricky, but seems like 23% of you got it. And we have a real mix of those attending in person and virtual. Good to see that. And I wasn't sure also like if I should do the in-person and hybrid. I'm sure if you're in person, you could always join things virtually. Of course, we welcome that. And yes, 68% of you have registered for the forum. I hope it becomes 100% by the end of today. That's my ambition. But I do hope many more of you can register. And if you need help with that, you can always ask the office. It should be pretty simple, but maybe if you're having any technical difficulties, Devin and the team, they're all very responsive on the info@NGOCSW email. So that's all I have today, and thank you so much. Maybe I should pass it back. I'm going to pass it to the Jillian and Pamela, who are going to be taking it over from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivy, and welcome to everyone. Thanks for doing the poll. 45 is the number of member states who follow the commission this year. So welcome everyone again. Happy New Year. My name is Jillian D'Souza Nazareth. I'm part of the Red Dot Foundation, and I also serve on the executive committee of NGO CSW. We're about to kick off the second part of our program this morning, which is centered around the priority theme and our expert panel who speak around it. So in preparation of CSW 67, today we're going to explore the dimensions of the upcoming commission. The priority theme, who most of you know already, is innovation and technological change, education in the digital age to achieve gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. So a little background, the UN Secretary General's roadmap for digital cooperation outlines a collective responsibility to give direction to technology, to maximize benefits and curtail unintended consequences. I personally especially like goal 3 of the roadmap, which is ensuring digital inclusion for all, including the most vulnerable. Now let's cut to September 2022. In the UN held the Transformation Education Summit. Many of you on this call, I know, attended that summit. And post that, UNESCO published a report. Can I ask everyone to please? Thank you. UNESCO published a report with a tangible result and the summit's 5 action tracks. Those 5 action tracks included safe and healthy schools, learning and skills for life, teachers and the teaching profession, digital transformation, and financing. So in drawing connections between the technological innovation and our shared global values, I'm grateful today for our speakers who have most graciously accepted our invitation to share their time and their expertise. So I welcome this morning Elena Estavio Flores, who is the CEO, Centro para la Sociedad del Futuro, Mac Glowinski, UNICEF's Global Program Chief of the Learning Passport, Sonia Jorge, the founder and executive director, Global Digital Inclusion Partnerships, Matthew Wong, who is the second secretary, Digital Cooperation and Cybersecurity at the Permanent Mission of Singapore, and Manjushri Patil, a founder and director of the Atman Academy. I'm going to start with Elena. I don't know if she's here already in the room. Elena, if you would like to turn on your audio and video and join me on camera, that would be great. Let's give Elena a minute. Okay, so I don't see Elena, but then let's move on. If Mac's here?
Hello.
Hey, Mac, good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon.
I don't know if you can see me. Yeah, here I'm calling in here from Valencia in Spain, where UNICEF has a computing center. We're working on
Fantastic. So Mac, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Transformation Education Summit, right? It was addressing barriers to access and connectivity, collaboration between public, private sector, civil society, national government, to achieve universal education in the digital age. Now that's a tall order, but I figured that you'd be the right person to help us navigate this question. So as UNICEF's Global Program Chief for the Learning Passport, can you start by explaining what is the Learning Passport and how can it be used?
I would love to. I have a small presentation too. I see screen sharing is disabled. I can, but I'd love to walk you through it. Beautiful.
Okay, go ahead.
Great. I know I have 5 minutes, so I'll try to move quickly. So The Learning Passport is UNICEF's flagship digital learning program. It's built on a core partnership between Microsoft and UNICEF with actually a number of other partners that help us kind of drive what we want to do. Next slide, please. Which is addressing kind of one of the most burning issues in the world, in my view, right now, which is the learning crisis, and it is nothing short of a crisis. These numbers are, every time I look at them, I get a little scared. This is about the future of society. And I think 463 million people are learners who had no access in COVID. 70% of 10-year-olds cannot understand a simple sentence, and that's up from 53% before COVID. So we're getting worse. And it calls for new ways of thinking to address this crisis. So together, next slide, please, with Microsoft, UNICEF is developing the Learning Passport, which is a digital learning program, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But what we're really doing, and what some of the work I'm doing here with my team in Valencia and the larger kind of UN UNICEF community, is taking some of the most promising emerging technological concepts and applying them to the most difficult situations to ensure that children and young people can take part in the digital future. And a significant focus of this is on girls, girls who do not have access to a lot of these digital landscapes globally. And, you know, the ranges of participation vary in different regions. But it's an incredible challenge, and a large percent of those learners that are not able to access learning are girls. The core value of UNICEF, core part of the mandate, but it is still incredibly prescient in the work that we do. What we are trying to do is reach at least 200 million of those children over the next 10 years, which is 10% of all the children in the world right now, and make sure that they have the skills and the education to thrive in that digital future. I think a lot of the participants on the call, we live in the digital space. We're having a meeting online right now. You probably have your productivity is online with the way that you use digital tooling. Your society's online with social networks. Your banks are online. Your entertainment's online. We live very much in the digital future right now, but there's that quote that the future is here and it's just not equitably distributed. So what we're trying to do in the Learning Passport is more equitably distribute the future and enable learners to take part in so much of the promise that lives in the digital space. Next slide, please. So we are primarily a technology platform. The platform that it works online. We publish it as a mobile application, so it works on mobile phones, and then we have an entire way to deliver digital education services without the internet. And it's highly flexible, so it meets learner needs and matches context. We're not monolithic in the way that we deploy the Learning Passport. We work with ministries around the world. We work with a wide variety of partners around the world, small NGOs to large international agencies. We work inside UNICEF at global level, at the regional level, and in the countries. UNICEF has a massive footprint. In 190 some odd countries around the world, 128 of those we actually run programs. So we work very closely at the local level, and the majority of the hundreds of people that work on the Learning Passport are in local and capitals and cities around the world. We really do lean into blended learning. So that is, it's not just digital all the time. I think that that's kind of a fallacy that you hear about digital learning a lot, but it is focusing on the teacher, focusing on students, the educational classroom, off-platform stuff, really working to enable better approaches to learning, not just to say that digital learning is the only way to do it, right? We're really interested in that, but we are much more interested in supporting a holistic learning environment through a blended approach. To do this, we partner with a lot of people. Public sector institutions, a lot of private sector companies, governments, foundations, civil society of all size around the world. And we really lean on the ability of UNICEF and our incredible global presence and mandate to make this happen. Next slide, please. So we have learners in every continent around the world. There's over 3 million learners using the Learning Passport now in 28 live countries. There are like another 30, 40, 50 that we're in discussion with. So our ambition of 200 million is actually somewhat feasible. It's not just a number we picked out of the air. We see incredible growth areas, not limited to any specific geography, nor limited to any specific implementation type, be that like formal learning or skill development or teacher-focused training or professional development. It is truly a global approach, which means that we have to be very flexible to meet the needs in all of these different places. What's happening in Laos is entirely different than what's happening in Mexico. And I think that that's a strength of the program. I was just in Ukraine a couple months ago, working to deploy the Learning Passport there. So it's a very diverse program, and I think that talks about the strength of the program, but the complexity. Next slide, please. What we're really doing is focusing on impact. This is not a technology for technology's sake program, which I think is also kind of a common pitfall that you hear about, especially in the international development community when people talk about the use of technology for programs. We focus on improving learning outcomes. We have a research team led by a couple of very talented people that really do focus on these elements. As we work for UNICEF, equity is always going to be a focus. And the key there in our landscape is removing barriers. And I think that certain types of people have more barriers than others, and girls being a massive part of the population that is experiencing more barriers when it comes to their access to education. It's something that we then focus more on. And I have some numbers actually I'll bring up in the next slide that are heartening, but we do really focus on barriers and the removal of barriers, and UNICEF works in the hardest places for the most marginalized, the most vulnerable, the hardest to reach. And so those barriers are something that is like my day to day. It's what my team and I sat talking about for 5 hours this morning about how do we remove certain types of barriers. We are trying to build the workforce of tomorrow. Again, the digital future, or people participate in that digital future in the digital space. A lot of the jobs are going to be digital too. So that's super important for us in different types of education segments. And it's really about economic growth, really. I mean, this is a societal issue. Like, education is not just learning, it is powering the improvement of society and the economy and the world in which we live in that should be greener and healthier and better. That's at the core of, I think, the services that we're doing. And one of the really cool ways that we're doing it is delivering digital learning experiences to places without the internet. And that really is kind of trying to shift the entire educational landscape when it comes to the accessibility of content and tooling, et cetera. Next slide, please. So I mentioned diversity, and this is K to gray in terms of the educational landscape. We work from early childhood to vocational and technical training and professional development for teachers. We work in emergency response areas. We work in middle-income countries, in the formal system, outside of it in skilling, or in mental health and psychosocial support and social emotional learning, and these concepts that are very important, I think, to make sure that learners are able to get into classrooms and learn, right? You have to be in a mental state, particularly in crisis situations. We have a very big deployment that's going to happen in Poland quite soon for all the Ukrainian refugees there, and that's something that I'm personally super excited about. And it's all about mental health and psychosocial support. It's not even math or literacy or numeracy. We do that. So in general, we work around the world in formal systems, in schools, in non-formal systems like learning centers, and then asynchronously at home. Since it's online, you can access it kind of anywhere for the elements of the program that are online. Next slide, please. So what we're doing is, when I talked about barriers, I think this is really the big innovative part of our program, where we're leverage a bunch of pretty emerging technical concepts to deliver a web experience like you were on the internet, but without connectivity. So we have a device that's actually, there's a couple, there's some here with me today that acts more or less, you could consider it a server that creates more or less, you could consider a Wi-Fi network that anyone with a browser can log into as if they were online, access their own Learning Passport application, look at and go through their own personal learning journeys, take assessments, get certificates, all those types of things, and we can creatively sync the device as well. And this is really about trying to kind of address the access gap that is such a huge problem, I think, when it comes to the digital space. Next slide. And we do it all over the world, as you saw on the map. There aren't even that many learning passports around the world. There are there's Compagnie in Laos, which is their local brand. I won't embarrass myself by trying to say the name in Jordan, or nor in Polish. In Mexico, it's a Pasaporte de Aprendizaje. Just a note here, some of these we focus on girls. In Jordan, it's about technical and vocational education and skills development for girls. We have an interesting skills program we're kind of spinning up in Central and Latin America for girls, STEM for girls, because we believe that that is an incredible impact space that an organization like UNICEF really must work in if we're going to succeed in delivering the mandate that we all signed up to do. Next slide, please. Oh, and before I get here, just some interesting facts too around the Learning Passport that I forgot and then kind of shifted over on that last slide. We see more girls accessing it, which is a really heartening thing for me. In the 20 countries where we gather gender-based information, where we get in the profile fields, those deployments ask for information around the gender of individuals. 57% of the registered learners are girls. So that's more than boys. On average, 55% of the active learners enrolled in courses are female. And similarly, 55% of the learners that complete courses are female. So we have this nice, and not by a huge margin, but a nice edge in terms of delivering the services to girls, which is, again, a target segment of the population that we're trying to reach. So I think that that is something important that we will continue to focus on if we're only just going to try to get better at what we do. We partner, as I mentioned, with a number of different types and sizes of organization. We partner in the implementation space. So using the Learning Passport to support education priorities in different places with different groups. We work a lot with very content providers. So we deliver all sorts of different content. We partner with private sector organizations, big and small, as well as public organizations. We have a digital content team led by Don, who's one of the best in class when it comes to digital learning content. And we have a big global library that we offer that to countries to use. We really look to share value. So we want to scale, we want to expand and we can only do that through partnerships that are financial or in kind or capacity or what have you. And we also need advocates to help influence people to continue kind of pushing the envelope in our space to really meet the needs of more learners. That was the next slide is just, I think, a thank you. So I think I made it not a little over time. I apologize. It's an honor to be here. Thanks so much for having me and happy to take any questions.
Hey, Mac, that you kind of took me away on a great journey there, because your presentation made me really hopeful that good things are happening, good things we can look forward to, and they're already being implemented. I want to say that I wasn't the only one who worked on this panel, and we had a group of very determined young ladies to push the barrier. And so I'm going to ask one of them, Ria, to join me with a short follow-up question for you. So, Ria.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you, Mac, for your presentation. The Learning Passport is incredible. I wanted to ask, you talked about the passport being used in different ways for formal education, skills training, offline and emergencies. Could you share more specific examples to help us all understand a bit more?
Happy to. A couple of the examples, I think Jordan is a good one. The real challenge here is that UNICEF, every third word that you hear around here is context, and context rules the way that we run our programs. We don't really do anything from a central level. We enable countries to meet the challenges and the needs where they are because they know better than anybody else would, right? You have to really know and experience a problem to best understand the way to address it. So I think in a number of the different countries like Poland, we work with the Ministry of Education to deliver mental health and psychosocial support trainings for Ukrainian teachers who find themselves there and have to work with the Ukrainian kids. The ministry's also asking us to support Polish teachers too, because I think everyone in the learning environments could get better at mental health and supportive services. I'm in Zimbabwe, one of our flagship countries, where we're the national learning platform, the digital learning platform, and one of the few countries that we're going to introduce a next kind of version of our offline learning. We work very closely. The minister, she's like a star. I got to meet her at the Transforming Education Summit. One of these people you just feel lucky to be around. It's really trying to bridge the gap between those that can afford mobile data as an access barrier and those that can. My colleagues here, I'm looking at them, are working on zero rating or making access to learning affordable, because data is surprisingly expensive in Zimbabwe. In Sierra Leone, we're working, there's actually a number of different ways we're using the Learning Passport there. We're training teachers, so if there's professional development in the ministry, which is a really fun deployment, kids are using the Learning Passport to prep for the national exams. So they take practice tests in Sierra Leone. It's also one of the places where there wasn't a lot of digital curricula to begin with, and so we're working very closely there to kind of introduce that types of learning. And in Jordan is a great program because it targeted girls. Like, that's what they said, we want to do girls in STEM. That's what we're going to do the Learning Passport here for. And we said, amazing, it sounds, of course, sounds great. So there they do a lot of gender equality programming, STEM stuff, but also gender-based violence content, comprehensive sexual education content, to really address the needs of those segments, those girls in Jordan that I think often don't receive those services as much in their society, and where UNICEF has some dedicated programming to reach those types of the population. It's just I mean, I could talk for hours and hours, but I understand you guys have a meeting and other people that you probably want to hear from. Learningpassport.org, you can email me. I'm sure they'll share the presentation, or learningpassport@unicef.org is our inbox, which my smarter and more capable colleague Ellen will get back to you. Love to hear from you, and thanks. Oh, and if you have any more questions, I think there might be more.
Yes, I would like to have a follow-up question. My second question would be, what is the next country that you're going to go live in?
It's a race. The countries kind of pop up all over the place, and some move faster than others. I'm really focusing on this next wave of offline deployments, where we're going to group a lot of those hub devices that there was that illustration of before, in the Philippines, who I think will probably be the next one to launch. Zimbabwe, where the program was so strong, we actually are adding that element to it. Lebanon, Nigeria, and Mexico, those are the 5 that we're going to start really focusing on offline. But Liberia, I have a feeling they're going to move pretty quickly. There's some possibilities in Brazil. So I don't know, I couldn't tell you. But the offline countries, I think that's where will be the focus, and I think that you may hear more about it in the news, whatever, because it is really, really exciting, and it is somewhat of a first of its kind. So we're ecstatic about that. But the next one, I don't know. My money would be on Philippines if I tell you, but don't tell anybody else I said that.
That's fantastic.
I just want to pipe in here and say thank you, Mac and Ria, so much, because the chat box also is so very active. And I'm going to pause with Mac just now, or we'll just run away with all the questions. And
yeah, I'm sorry.
I'd like to come back to you, Mac, a little later. But I'd like to ask Sonia to join us again. Sonia, hi, morning. I want to touch upon, as a lifelong proponent of affordable internet, and you have most recently founded and are the executive director of Global Digital Inclusion Partnership. Can you talk a little bit on your recommendations as part of your expert group paper to UN Women on how on the policies that we need to make the internet affordable to all, specifically in relation to the recommendations to UN Women coming up for in the upcoming commission?
Absolutely. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me and for giving the space to talk about these issues. And thanks for everyone who's on the call. It's really exciting to be here talking to you. So as Jillian mentioned, I lead the Global Digital Inclusion Partnership, which is an organization. It's really a coalition, a global coalition of public, private, and civil society organizations that have come together to work on these very complicated but absolutely critical issue of meaningful connectivity to the global majority. And I want to make that point very clear because we've been doing these for quite some years now through our formal work, etc. And we started by focusing on affordability precisely for some of the issues that actually Mac just mentioned in his presentation and Jillian just highlighted. Having the foundation for the possibilities that digital community brings to all of us is absolutely critical. And the truth is, in the majority of the world, that foundation, which is affordable, meaningful connectivity, and I'll tell you precisely what that means, is very far from being a reality, and especially very far from being a reality for women and girls in rural areas, women and girls that are from marginalized communities. And this is a very important point to make, because as we, as GDIP, as we call ourselves, work with governments, private sector, and civil society to not only reform and update policy and regulatory frameworks around the world to directly tackle this issue, we need to understand the different dimensions that we are talking about. And I want to preface that before I enter on specific recommendations, Jillian, because the recommendations are the kinds of actions that need to take place, very similar to what Mac was mentioning in terms of the learning passport. They're very contextualized, and it really depends on which region you're working, which country you're working, what are the priorities and the most urgent gaps that exist in each particular setting. But let me start by just sharing a couple of things to give you an idea of how we tackle that. First of all, understanding what we are dealing, what is the problem, right? This idea of the digital gender gap and the foundation for everything digital development, which is having affordable access to data, it's critical. And the reality in the world is that really more than 50% of the world's population does not have access to meaningful connectivity, which is what we call the ability to access the internet in an affordable way through an appropriate device with a quality connection that allows people to have the quality of data, at least what equivalent to what people now around the world like to call it 4G. So equivalent to a 4G connection in an unlimited way, however and wherever they want to access. That reality is very, very different from what most people expect. So when you think about the numbers that come out of the ITU, which are really that tracks and measures progress in our sector very frequently, think about the continent of Africa having only about 30% of the population with basic access. That basic access to the internet doesn't mean that those who actually have access have the ability to access the kinds of things that, for example, Mac was talking about, digital learning, don't have the kind of data plans and devices and foundational connectivity that allows them to actually benefit from things like a digital learning program or any kind of digital education. The same is true for healthcare or agriculture or what have you. So we need to think about this foundation, which is understanding what meaningful connectivity means and how people can afford that before we can think about how to recommend actions. And so when the other thing that I wanted to mention to all of you is that just a few numbers to put that in perspective. I mentioned Africa, so think about 29% of the population that have basic access, which is measured by the ability to go online at least once in the last 3 months. Yes, ludicrous, but that's exactly how still it is measured in the world. Well, only about 13% of South Africans have the kind of connectivity, meaningful connectivity that we are talking about that is necessary to be able to benefit from the kinds of digital programming that we are talking about, like the digital learning or anything else. 7% of Ghanaians have access to that kind of connectivity, 12% of Nigerians, and so on and so forth. Only 26% of Colombians, a country that is an incredible country that have done great progress, just like Ghana, Nigeria, and South Africa in many different ways. But again, what is the quality and the level of affordability that people have, especially women who are already facing different levels of inequality as members of the society, it puts them at a disadvantage. Women traditionally will, because of income gaps and other kinds of structural inequalities, also have access to much lower functional devices. So even when people say, well, women, the gender gap in mobile use is reducing, well, yes and no. It's reducing because people have what you call a mobile phone on their pockets, but that mobile phone is not a smartphone, is not a tablet, is not a computer that allows them to actually benefit from the functionality of digital services and products that the world is really bringing upon all of us. And so because of that reality, we need to think about these services and all of these possibilities, not just understanding the reality that women and girls face in their countries, in their regions, but also what can policymakers and what can private sector and civil society do to change that, frankly, very bleak picture right now. And so that I hope you can manage to review not just my paper, but all the other amazing papers that incredible researchers submitted to the expert group meeting that the CSW organized. It was a fantastic discussion. I wish all of you could have been there. I learned so much from our peers in the space, but a couple of things that I'll highlight. One is, if countries, if governments, national governments have what they call digital policies, broadband plans, ICT policies that do not have gender-specific targets and considerations, by default, they will fail. And they are not addressing these massive problems that the digital gender gaps, that are there in terms of the digital gender gap, but also the different dimensions of that gender gap, including the rural-urban divides, the age divides, the regional and national divides, all of these concerns that for me are very important. So making sure that policy and regulatory frameworks are updated to have serious commitment to gender targets. And when I say gender targets, I'm not just saying we're going to make sure that 50% of women have access to the internet. It's more specific than that. It's reducing the gaps. Is having serious programming and projects that are going to tackle the problem, right? And there's many ways of doing that we can talk about. Some countries are starting to do that. It's very important to integrate all of you in these discussions. We at GDIP work with governments in a way that is very much multi-stakeholder in nature, and that means that we bring civil society, private sector, public sector together to develop and design policies that are more gender responsive. And this is really important because myself, or many of the government experts, including, are not the ones who know better the realities of women in rural areas, Nigeria or Bangladesh or Colombia, right? So you need to have the organizations, women's organizations, as gender advocates, folks in the different sectors coming together and really helping designing, influencing how policies need to be shaped to be able to be implementable as well. So that's really important. The other thing that is also really important in terms of a recommendation is for governments and all of their partners to be wiser about dedicating resources to tackle this specific problem. We know that technology is not neutral. We know that policies are not neutral from a gender perspective. And so we really need, it's kind of like affirmative action, as some people like to say. You need to be specific, you need to be very firm and affirmative as to what you're trying to achieve. And if we're not going to get there, right? If there's no accountability, if there's nothing that needs to be measured to show that you've done progress in X area, it's not going to happen. So not just in terms of the policy design and the targets of the policy, but the commitment of resources to secure actual implementation of policy and projects and programs is critical. So we need to make sure that budgets and resources are dedicated to ensuring that the digital gender gap is tackled and actually this picture changed. And what I can tell you is that I'm mostly very disappointed by the world at large, because in the last decade, the digital gender gap has pretty much stayed the same. And while there's been progress in many ways, when you measure it, we're not doing enough. Not only we're not doing enough, we're not being able to change that picture. And because the needs of higher of a different level of connectivity continue to increase, we are actually allowing greater inequality and exclusion to take place. And I don't want to see that. So I'll come back to a couple of things because I want to be conscious of time, Jillian. But there's a couple of things that I would like to share in terms of some of these points that I just raised. Thank you.
Sonia, you just blew my mind. And I'm actually going to call on Carla because she's done a bit of research and homework on all of the work that you've been doing. Carla, if you'd like to ask your question to Sonia.
Hello. Thank you so much, Sonia, for your presentation. It was really complete. Well, I would like to ask, what will be an advice that do you have for us NGOs and specifically as youth leaders? This is our future. So how can we advocate and look to promote lifelong digital literacy?
That's a very good question. Thank you. And the answer could be a whole hour, so I'll have to be very careful. There's a few things I would say. Start by being informed, knowing the language that you need to use, having the facts, having the evidence so that you can influence dialogues, be part of the dialogue. So as youth, and this is true for not just youth, but for all different organizations, especially organizations that work on gender advocacy, stay on top of the issues, be informed, be ready and equipped to participate in policy dialogues, in decision-making processes. Don't be on the sidelines, don't be on the margins. Do everything that you can to be at the center of those discussions. Most governments are required to have public consultations when it comes to decision-making around policymaking. And what I can tell you is that sometimes they actually promote those kinds of consultations. But the reality is that in practice, very few organizations actually participate, partially because they are not at the level that they feel they are literate to be part of that dialogue, right, Carla? So, and others because they are intimidated by speaking with governments, by confronting private sector and other organizations that sometimes are big or more equipped. Don't be afraid. Every voice counts. And the truth is, your context is the context that is going to be most interesting to remind them of the reality that they are voted to be thinking about. If policymakers are not working in the public interest, then they are not doing their job. And the public interest is making sure that they listen to you, listen to your concerns. And even if you cannot articulate those concerns in a language that they think is their language, well, they also need to learn your language. So I think it's a reciprocal process, but it's one that really takes time, it takes resources, it takes commitment, but partially is being informed, know your evidence. There's many organizations that I'm sure are here today are developing research, reports that have a lot of really good information. All you need is a few nuggets to come and make your mark and be heard. And when you do that, I can assure you, policymakers are politicians as well. They will listen. So be there, be present.
This is so valuable. Thank you so much. We just had an event yesterday related with youth advocacy. And I think that these tips are really important to share with them. I hope that some of them could be here with us today. But this is really, really important. Thank you so much.
Of course, you're welcome.
I want to say thank you to Sonia and to Carla because, you know, you've really got the crowd going. And I think it's a perfect opportunity to now call on Matthew Wong, the Second Secretary of Digital Cooperation and Cybersecurity at the Permanent Mission of Singapore. Matthew, you've heard from UNICEF, you've heard from proponents and what we as NGOs are thinking of suggesting. We've also read and understood some of the SG's roadmap. Are you able to share with us on what to expect in the year ahead? Are we moving in the right direction? Sonia talks about, talking at all levels. So I'd like to invite you now, Matthew, if you'd like to share our reasons to be hopeful from your perspective.
Thank you, Jillian. And well, I guess I'll start off by thanking you and the other organizers for inviting me to speak on this very distinguished panel. So yes, I think, there are many reasons to be hopeful for the year ahead. It's quite an exciting year. But first of all, as Gillian mentioned, I'm a diplomat at the Permanent Mission of Singapore, and I primarily work on digital and cyber issues. So before addressing the specific topic of today's discussion, I just want to set the stage with a few words about Singapore's overall approach towards gender equality. So in Singapore, we are committed to supporting women by building a fair and inclusive society where men and women progress together and pursue their aspirations freely and to the fullest. And in this way, our approach is founded on the principle of meritocracy, where equal opportunities are available to both men and women. So keeping that in mind, I just want to share some thoughts and reflections now in my personal capacity on the theme of today's discussion. And I'll share this from the perspective of a political officer in a national delegation. So working with NGOs, working with other member states through the UN system to achieve change and positive progress. So the next 2 years are going to be a really pivotal period for digital discussions at the UN. As some of you may be aware, we are about to start discussions on the Global Digital Compact. And to give some background for those who are not familiar with this, the Secretary General in his Our Common Agenda report proposed the development of a Global Digital Compact that will outline shared principles for an open, free, and secure digital future for all. And these discussions are going to be taking place over the course of this year and next year. And the hope is that there will be a final document that we can agree at the Summit of the Future in September 2024. So that essentially sets out the roadmap for what's going to happen on digital over the next 2 years, and which is why I think, Gillian, to answer your question, this is quite a hopeful period. There's a lot of potential to really make a difference now. So Singapore is we're very strongly supportive of the Global Digital Compact. In our national capacity, we've been actively engaged, and from our perspective, we see the compact as an opportunity for the international community to set out this common framework for digital transformation that can improve lives, empower people, and most importantly, advance the SDGs. So our hope is that essentially it serves as a positive foundation that will guide our development of the digital landscape in the years to come. So I suppose some of you might be wondering what exactly the Global Digital Compact is going to be looking at, going to be trying to cover. And the Secretary General has proposed a set of issues that he thinks the compact should focus on. So one of the main issues is connectivity. So what Sonia just spoke about, in many parts of the world, people do not have meaningful connectivity, and we need to find a way to close that gap. So that's one of the big things that we will be talking about in the Global Digital Compact discussions. There's also things about data protection, human rights, misleading content, artificial intelligence, and digital public goods. From Singapore's perspective, we also think that the compact should cover issues like online safety, data flows, digital skills and literacy, and of course, capacity building. So it's very clear that in the context of education, digital education, many of these issues, things like connectivity, things like digital public goods, these things are sort of the basic building blocks that we need to deliver the kind of game-changing digital initiatives that Mac was speaking about earlier. And as Sophia mentioned as well in her presentation, today's digital landscape is characterized by these deep cross-cutting inequalities. You have the digital development gap, you have the digital gender gap, you have the rural-urban divide, you have this massive lack of digital inclusion in many parts of the world. And the Global Digital Compact essentially gives us this opportunity to, in a way, press the reset button, set out some common principles and goals in each of the areas outlined that will help us close these divides, move towards a more equal and empowered digital landscape. And that of course will help address many of the inequalities that are faced by the most marginalized and the most disadvantaged, including those inequalities that are faced by women and girls around the world. So the hope is that, my personal hope is that the Global Digital Compact can act as a catalyst to accelerate the possibilities that we have for delivering digital education, digital inclusion in a way that can move us towards gender parity. So that being said, governments cannot do this alone, and this is where I come with my message to you. The NGOs, any progress that we make at the UN towards harnessing digital education, any progress that we make towards harnessing digital inclusion to move us towards gender equality will need the involvement of stakeholders, including businesses, including NGOs, including private sector. So the Secretary General has already envisioned that discussions on the Global Digital Compact will include a prominent multi-stakeholder component. I understand that all of the NGOs on this call are primarily involved in CSW discussions, and of course that's a third committee process, and the Global Digital Compact is a second committee process. So some of you may not be as familiar with that side of the house at the UN, because obviously the UN is in a way quite siloed. We split ourselves into these committees and then we specialize in these committees. But digital is a cross-cutting issue, gender is a cross-cutting issue, and while it may be outside your usual area of familiarity, we need your expertise in our discussions on the Global Digital Compact, relating to gender equality, relating to the empowerment of women and girls. We need that perspective in our side of the house as well. So I very much encourage you to bring your voices there, bring your messages there, and share your expertise, engage in a conversation with us. So my hope is that working together over the next 2 years, we can harness the collective energy of all delegations and stakeholders to create a meaningful Global Digital Compact that can serve as a positive foundation for the digital world in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Matthew, your words are music to my ears, because you talked more about interaction, about partnerships, about how to engage more. And that's really helpful for us over the next 2 years. And so I'm going to bring Ria back onto the call with a bit of a question for you, more to push you more on what you said. So Ria, if you're around, if you'd like to join us.
Hi, Gillian. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew, as well. In the spirit of partnership and collaboration amongst all stakeholders, what tips, tricks, advice would you have for us in our advocacy in achieving gender parity through digital education?
Thank you, Ria. I think I would say that there are a few things that that from the perspective of a member state, I think it would be very helpful for you as NGOs, as people speaking out in advocacy to keep in mind. I think I would say the first thing to do is to remember that you are part of an NGO community. So obviously you represent your position, but you also are part of this community of so much expertise and so much diversity. So I would say work together with others in the community to amplify your message, because the strength of the NGO community is that there is the diversity, right? In this call alone, we have 300 participants, but obviously from the challenge is that if member states hear 300 statements or get 300 pieces of input, it's a bit challenging to then distill that into something actionable, something that reflects reflects the key concerns and the key things that we need to address. So I would say work together with others. Come up with joint input, joint statements, and that will amplify your message, because sometimes it's not about saying the same thing many times. It's about getting the message down to what's really important and then putting that in front of the people that need to hear it. So that's, I think, the first thing that I will say. The second thing I will say is pay attention to the specific issues that are being discussed. And I say this because I'm sure as many of you are familiar with the discussions at the UN can tend to get very esoteric sometimes. So, you know, you think you're talking about connectivity, but actually there's a big fight going on about some specific aspect of connectivity. And if you come in as an NGO and you deliver, say, your general statement on why connectivity is important, you're not going to make the impact at that point in negotiations, because, you know, we hear the general statement, but at that point, what's really being argued about is something very specific. So if you keep very close track of what actually is the, you know, the primary matter that's being discussed, that's being argued over, and if you come in with something that's directly relevant to that, that's where you can make a very, very important impact. Because I mean, we are listening out for that as well. We are listening out for potential solutions, potential ideas, but we, in a way, it's only when we hear something that's very, very relevant, very targeted, then that's where, you know, what you say makes a big impact, because it has the potential to shift the discussion. And I think the third thing I will say is that so we learned this early on as diplomats, and I'm sure many of you know this already as well. A lot of the important discussions at the UN and elsewhere aren't happening in the room; they are happening outside of the room. So you know, don't just focus on delivering the perfect statement. Sometimes, you know, it's sometimes that's not actually where you make the most difference. Focus on getting to know the diplomats who are covering your issue, getting to know the other NGOs who are covering your issue. Go outside of your comfort zone, talk to those people that you may not normally talk to, who may not share your positions. And you know, that's how we find new perspectives and new ways forward. And it's those informal conversations that also have the potential to, you know, shift the direction that things are moving in and shift things in a positive direction. So that's my advice for you. That's also, you know, the same thing that we do as diplomats representing member states. So that's the kind of thing that that you can do if you want to find a way to amplify the impact of your advocacy.
Matthew, can I just say that was like a mini masterclass? So thank you so much. But I also am glad you touched upon diversity, because we at NGO CSW like to celebrate women in all our diversity. So thank you for bringing that up as well. And I will come back to you. I see questions in the box. I see a lot of compliments as well. But I would like to bring in another stakeholder at this point, who is imperative to the piece of the puzzle, that is an educator and an actual on-ground practitioner. A good time as any to hear from Ms. Manjushri Patil, founder and director of the Atman Academy. Manjushri, if you could explain a little bit about your academy and where you are stuck in this digital divide. So Manjushri, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and honored to be here in the August gathering of so many wonderful people. And as I was listening to all of them, one thought that was coming to my mind is these are people who are working at a macro level and then coming to the micro. I mean, they're policies and think tanks and stuff like that, big. And here I am, I'm one small little person. I have a small idea and I want to implement it. And what I want to do is I'm micro and I want to go macro. So I'm going to just give a little heads up on what I do. I've been an educator for over 3 decades. And currently for the last 12 years, I am running a school which caters to the learning needs of diverse learners. And I would like to call it an inclusive school, because in fact, that's what I proposed in one of my TEDx talks, that inclusion is really about diverse people coming together, and it has nothing to do with abilities and disabilities. Because oftentimes I get asked, you know, oh, you're an inclusive school, so you have normal children in your school. And I'm like, why do we even think about that? I have 12 different kids or 15 different kids or 20 different kids in one class. They are here together, they're learning together, they respect each other, they have dignity for each other, and they're working, and that's inclusion. So with that in mind, I've been doing a lot of work on the space of inclusion. probably one of the things is the moment, inclusion best when you get excluded. So my pain point with all of my children is I should have not even had to start this school, but they have been excluded so badly from their learning systems that they needed a space that was going to take them as they are and love them as they are and let them be their best versions, not be something else. And having been a principal of an international school before I started this school, I also realized other pain points, So the bigger pain points then started emerging as in a classroom or in a setup, in a school setup or an educational setup. What typically happens is maybe 4 or 5 people are very sensitive and they know how to handle or take care of the needs of any learners who have diversities. But what about the other 14, 15 who are interacting with those children or those learners who are diverse learners? And I'm not necessarily saying children with disabilities. So there was where all this churning began. And I said, we have to do something where schools and educational institutions have an inclusive culture. So having been a trainer, I've trained a couple of 10,000, 100,000 teachers across India and out of the country as well. And I started realizing that, it is not just teachers. We're barking up the wrong tree. And that's when I was blessed with a Fulbright fellowship, and I've just returned only recently, about a month ago, from the US. And during my fellowship program, I created a project called I Lead, which really is, Ria, would you have the slide, if you could pop it up, if that's possible? It's just one slide, which was my poster, which we presented at Washington, DC. And in that, at the ground level, I have created something that like a toolkit, which is a toolkit. And thank you so much. Thank you so very much. So I'm not really going to go into the details of it. You can each have a look at it. But what really, this was basically my project. And it has been churning inside of me for the last almost 5 years, where I said, we are just working with teachers. I'm training teachers. I'm currently conducting a course on inclusive education, but that's not enough. Everybody from the security to the people who are custodians, to the people who are, from the office staff, everybody needs to really know about inclusion. And that's when I created this. And my aim, so like I said, this is really, everybody who spoke has already done a lot. For me, this is a work in progress. This is fresh out of the oven. And what I plan to do is take this entire project on the digital platform so that I don't need to be there, because we need to really use and leverage the digital platform and make use of it so that it reaches the last teacher or educator or staff member on the last mile in every country in the world. I want this to be something that will create a culture of inclusion across educational institutions, across workplaces. So it's something that I'm working on, and I am heavily relying on the digital platform to help me take this places so that I don't need to ever be there as a trainer, because how much can you actually do? You can't be going around training in person, it's really very, very difficult. So this is where I come from, and this is where I plan to go here on this point forward.
Manjushri, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. And you've just opened our minds, especially from the perspective of saying the difference between micro and macro, and what it is that, what it is that we need and we're looking for. So I'm going to call on Sophia, who has been tracking your work online, because just so that she could, be aware of it. So Sophia, if you're around and you'd like to join us and have a question for Manjushri.
Yes, thank you, Jillian, for the floor. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Manjushri, for talking us through all the great work you do at Atman Academy and with iLead. My question to you is, what would you ask of member states to implement at local levels to help you scale your program to be affordable and accessible to all?
Oh, wow, that you are, you're sounding to me like a genie. Give your wish and we shall make it happen. So I'm really excited with that question. And one thing is, what I would really ask is for more people to join hands with me, because I'll be honest to you, right now I'm a lone traveler, and it's just an idea that I've given birth to. I want it to grow, and I'll need the support of the community and the people around in the world, of like-minded people to join me. So that's one thing for sure. I really would like more people to connect with me so that we can make this project big. In terms of affordability, yes, like someone has in fact written on the chat, if it has been read. I didn't read right who wrote that question, but somebody said, what about the fact that all of these digital platforms cost a lot? So I can be very gung-ho about wanting to put it all on the digital platform, but again, it boils down to funds. And as I said, I'm a lone traveler. I have a very small little setup and I'm doing this all by myself. I need help, and I really do need to have more people supporting to create this entire program, to put it out there on the digital and virtual platforms so that more people can access it. So that's for affordability. And for accessibility, let's join hands. I'd like to come to more countries across and make the, in fact, as a Fulbrighter, I have already had a couple of my Fulbright friends who have heard about my project. My friends from Israel, from Singapore, my friends from Botswana and Uganda, they've all told me, make your program, crystallize it, and give us a call. We really would like to take it to our countries. So I'm inviting and urging everyone in this group to come join along. So let's do it together. I would like to have more. Let it be like Abu Ben Adem, may his tribe increase. Let's all do it together.
So thanks, Manjushri. I see what you're looking for and asking for here are partnerships. And maybe the learning passport or partnerships amongst NGOs is something that you can take offline and speak to separately. Having said that, I'm really cognizant of time, and we've got, a wealth of speakers. And so without further ado or delay, I'm going to call on Elena. Elena is the CEO of Centro para la Sociedad del Futuro. Don't kill me if I mess that up. You were a part of the 2022 expert group meeting with UN Women in preparation for this year's priority theme, and wrote a paper on what mechanisms can ensure digital technologies which favor inclusion and close the gender gaps. Bringing up the last of our expert speakers today, I was wondering if you could frame and talk a little bit about the actions that are needed to bring about systemic change, and also in reflection to what you've heard all of the other speakers talk about or bring up as issues today. Elena, all yours.
Thank you, Julian. Yes, I want to talk about how to bring about systemic change, but really, why do we need to bring about systemic change? And reflecting, we have heard about the digital gender gaps that are not closing. For example, that Sonia has told us in the last 10 years, we stayed approximately the same. And also during COVID, some of these gender gaps widened. That they not only are not closing, but it started to grow again. And we have new gaps because technology is evolving. And now we see gaps in, for example, in the artificial intelligence, and we will see them in the metaverse. Why? Because they are underlying structural causes that are not changing. And many of our efforts, there are huge efforts to bring about change, but we're not looking at the systemic nature of things. And why do I call for this systemic change? Because the reason that we're not closing these divides is because we're practically not modifying this underlying system that produces discrimination against women. This is a structural discrimination. So we're looking at the effects of, or at the results of this discrimination. And the results, the symptoms are the gaps. And we have to work yes, on the symptoms, but also on the underlying system, because if we don't, we will never get to close. And this is like a guacamole kind of thing. You work in something and then another thing goes up because the system has not been changed. And this is one of my main recommendations. We have to start working together in the structural nature of this problem. There is a system that we have to disrupt. So when we're working at closing specific gaps, this disruption of the structural nature of things do not keep producing the same gap or other kinds of gaps. And that is why I focus my recommendations on two main lines. That is this systemic approach, and that is to conceive, to analyze problems from as a system, not one by one kind of action, but how to articulate, to relate to different actions that we're applying in different different stages or different manifestations of this system, but to articulate them so we can sum up, we can multiply and disrupt effectively these systems. And this is one of my recommendations to work in a systemic way. And other is to apply gender perspective. We have to apply gender perspective in all policy making, because when we think on gender perspective, many people think that it has to be applied to gender policy, to gender actions, and this is not the case. We have to apply gender perspective in every policy, in every decision, and not just when we're talking about closing gender gaps. We have to apply a gender perspective, for example, in the design of devices, and when we are allocating resources to different kinds of actions within the digital ecosystem, not only when we are talking about gender, because this is part of the systemic nature of our problems, that we do not apply a gender perspective in this all other decision making, and so these other kinds of decision makings continue to bring about gender gaps. And the other component that has to support these two recommendations is to have gender data, better gender data, more gender data, so that we can make better decision making. When I talk about systemic change, then we have to look at many components of the system and how gaps are manifesting, or the symptoms from, if I may say, from the use side, from the demand side, but also from the producer side. We need to close gaps. For example, in this data set, we have to debias data sets that are being used for public policy, and for AI systems. We have to include more women, we know, but also feminist points of view. It's not just to make way to women to participate in all these decision spaces, but also that this gender perspectives calls for feminist points of view, inclusive points of view, not only from women, but from men, and in every decision-making space. So we have to know about it. We need training. This doesn't come in a natural way. It's gender perspective training for everybody in this decision-making spaces in all the digital space. since this is a systemic approach, we need to bring about many actions, but not in a separated way. We need to articulate, to collaborate, to talk, just as has been said also, to talk and to work together, government, NGOs, the education part, the industry. We need more inclusion in the industry. So we have also, from this point of view, in the design of devices, in addressing specific market barriers, for example, we need more resources directed to women-led ventures, for women and inventions, for women research, or for women-led research and their projects. We have huge gaps there, and this is also part of this systemic nature. If we don't get women to develop their inventions, to develop their creativity, their points of view in research, then we are missing all these points of view and information, data, resources. Don't look then at the issues that women find relevant, necessary, and that have to do with our conditions to access the digital. I will finish there, Manuel. Thank you.
Thanks, Elena. You talked so much about systemic changes, and you've given a lot of food for thought. And I'm going to call Sophia back on to help with a question and also to pick an audience question. Sophia.
Yes, thank you, Jillian. And thank you, Elena. You spoke beautifully about applying systemic analysis to address the root causes of digital gender gaps. So I'm wondering if you have any specific advice or examples on how this can be achieved based on your experiences as an advocate of this systemic change.
Oh, thank you. Yes, yeah. We have to consider how different conditions interact continually to maintain this structural gender discrimination in place. And I'm talking about not only a couple of factors or a list of factors to target separately. That is what we have been doing, and we have to have a coherent and integrated approach. The strategies should aim at deactivating permanently these mechanisms that reproduce gender discrimination. So that's why we need comprehensive strategies to think about processes and systems and the different places where we have to act to deactivate mechanisms. And this is very, very related to gender perspective. But gender perspective is basically a systemic approach, because it makes us question what are the difficulties that women face? Are they different from women to men, to other gender identities? What are their situation? So this is very close to a systemic approach, and this is the best sum of changes is this to dismantle these systems and but helping us from applying gender perspective horizontally to all decision making, as I said, where to data, to resource allocation, to equipment design, to communication and marketing also, so that we bring the correct messages for women, for the communities, for the schools, for the families. And project funding and investment, this is very, very important. This we have to work to move from the discourse to the resource. We need resources for all of this.
Thank you, Elena. I love what you just said, to move from discourse to resource. That is a very inspiring motto to live by. Now I will pull a question from the audience, and I think this is a very important question for all the feminist activists and scholars out there. But Yehudit asks, what do you think is the #1 cause of women not achieving all they can achieve?
Yes. It's patriarchy. Patriarchy is a system, and we have grown in that. We're developing in that system, and this is a system of structural discrimination, and this is so normalized that sometimes we don't see it. So we need to study, to prepare ourselves to learn about feminist causes. In fact, we enjoy many things that have been gained by feminists in our past, but many things are not gained. Many things are subject to being lost also. So we have to continue being close to some women. We have to work together, and also to communicate this feminist points of view to men. We cannot change this world only by the half of the world that is women. This is a fight for everybody that is related to getting out of a system that limits so much women and men. And well, that is the importance of the feminist point of view.
If I can just jump in, Sophia, Elena, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I mean, you've given us, such a lot to think about, to talk about. You've probably given us enough information for the next couple of meetings. But I am really cognizant of time just now, and I know that there have been a lot of questions in the chat box. So I'm going to quickly, I know I've overshot with my speakers and what I committed to y'all in terms of time. So if I may invite all of our speakers back on, if you are here, if you are not, and I completely understand you would need to leave, I just want to quickly ask all of you one simple question. We've talked a lot, what I believe is on recommendations, accountability, how we can move the needle. And I think many of you alluded to the fact that this requires funding, this requires financial from pull. So if there is just one idea that you would say on how do we move the needle on funding to hold every stakeholder accountable, I'd ask you to please share it with this entire group as we prepare to come on board and advocate in the next 2 months as harsh and as strong as we possibly can. So any one of you would like to take that, just unmute yourself and go ahead, please.
If I can speak again from a micro level, one of the things for funding that I feel is some way that the work that is being done is credible. If there can be in Mac's zone of work, a passport that says this is credible work, because funding will come to people and organizations whose work is credible. I'm micro. How does anybody know who I am? So how can somebody give a credible stamp to the work that is being done so that they know the funds are going in the right direction and there's going to be no malpractice over there? A passport, a funding passport.
Mac, you want to take that?
I would like to, and to the way we started the Learning Passport was getting people to agree on, getting Microsoft, getting other partners, Cambridge University, to agree on an articulation of a shared vision. Like, what do we really, really want to do? Boil it down into a mission statement rather than education, right? Or gender or fairness or equality or patriarchy, right? What is the one thing that we're trying to tackle here? And it is digital learning for kids without the internet. And we started there. That was the vision. And then you could build, and people came in, and the consensus, it kind of snowballed. But we started with a tight articulation of a problem and then went out of that. That's my piece.
Elena, would you?
Yes, it will be very helpful to measure and to be transparent as to where the resources go, because there are many unconscious bias, and we do not know that the resources are being allocated in a very unbalanced way. So we have to start by measuring, to having data and being transparent. And in that way, the organizations can think about why is this happening? Where do we have to act? What to look for?
So I'm gonna use this recording to make notes, and I see Sonia has turned her camera on. So Sonia, if you'd like to go next.
Sure. I mean, all of you already said like really excellent points. I'm not going to repeat those. What I would say is that from my perspective and working with so many, governments, private sector, and also our own civil society sector, we need to do a better job at creating the gender equitable foundations in our sector, in the overall digital development sector. We're not there. And I think we all can take active responsibility because it is a collective. We all do, it may seem that what we're doing individually is a small piece, but all together, collectively, we can really make change. So I would say, however you can do it in your space, in your sector, in your organizations, through your partners, make sure that everyone is investing in those gender equitable foundations that then will inform and influence the change that we want to see taking place, from the systemic changes that Elena mentioned to changes in the learning environments that Mac mentioned, and to all the different resources that Majushi was mentioning that are needed. We have a role to play. Don't be complacent, act. We have this thing at GDIP and many of our partners and colleagues, we developed this framework that we call REACT. I'll ask you to look for it. There's no time to talk about it, but what I say is always react. If you're not reacting and doing something, you are being part of that exclusion and inequality system. If you don't want to be part of that, react something and things can change. It takes time, but they will. Thank you. And thank you for organizing these, Jillian.
My pleasure. Again, I come back to time and I see my team has collected all of the questions which have come up in the chat box. And I think in the interest of time, I will share them with each of our speakers and allow for a response, a more detailed response in time, because there are multiple questions to each of you. But I would like at this point to acknowledge the content-rich and vibrant conversation. And I want to say a special thank you to our advocacy and research group, because we talked at the start, Ivy talked about the 5 recommendations that the committee has come out with. And it's actually spot on in what you as speakers have shared today. So if these 5 recommendations are being shared with the Bureau and with member states as we meet them. Most importantly, it's also open for sign-in. For your support, you don't have to sign as an organization. You can also sign as an individual. So please make sure you sign up, you support these. What happens with your sign up is these recommendations, when they're shared with the member states, the list of names also go in, no information, no email address, nothing, but just your name to say that you support these 5 recommendations. So Marcia's question of where to sign, if I can ask Devin to put the link in the chat box. If not, it's on our website. You can look on the top left, there's a scrolling bar. If you are on our emailing list, I think it was also sent out around the 6th of Jan. You can go back to old emails. It's on across our social medias. Excuse me, in our Instagram bio as well. There are lots of places you can find it, but the chat box right now, we'll post it again. I want to thank every single one of you for joining, because if not for you, there is no meeting, right? You make the meeting happen. I want to thank our speakers for your generosity of spirit in sharing your expertise experience and being so honest with your responses. I think that's what really filled my heart today, the honesty of your response. And I wish, and to everyone who's worked behind the scenes with me to make Zoom happen, to make sure that this was flawless for over 300 people. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to hand back to Rosa and Huri to continue the conversation. So thank you, everyone. Rosa, back to you.
Thank you so much, Jillian. And I really want to thank you for putting together an incredible program. This has been very, very valuable. As you all know, this recording will be available on our YouTube channel. So it's a lot of information that's thrown at you. And we want to make sure that people are learning with us about these issues, especially around this issue, which, as you heard, so many different changes, so many different perspectives. It's a theme that is at the UN, top of the agenda, and with civil society, with women around, women and girls around the world. Very, very important issue. So again, I want to thank our organizers, our youth organizers who helped. I want to thank our speakers, Max, Sonia, Matthew, Manjushri, Elena. Thank you so much for joining in today's program. I am closing on behalf of our chair, Huri Gerelekian, who is having to step away. But I want to thank everyone again. Thank you for our team, Devin, who is providing a lot of links in the chat for everyone to stay up to date. I encourage you again, register for the NGO CSW Forum. Just go to ngocsw.org so you can register there and join in participating in our forum, 2-week forum. We have over 800 events, including 750 so parallel events. We have conversation circles. We have regional caucuses, thematic caucuses. So thank you so much again for joining. Apologies for not being able to open the floor. We have so many people who would like to speak and say a few words and ask questions, but we're limited in time. And so thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next month. If you have any questions, write to us at info@ngocsw.org. So thank you, everyone. Take care, and we'll open it up for people to say
Thank you.
Goodbye in your own language and in your own.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.